The clock on the wall of the surgical waiting room was a special kind of torturer. Each tick was a drop of acid on my raw nerves. 6:47 a.m. My fiancé, Liam, should have been wheeled into the operating room across the hall 45 minutes ago. My sister, Maya, was already in there, prepped and waiting for the piece of his liver that was supposed to save her life. My mom was trying to knit, but she'd dropped the same stitch a dozen times, her hands trembling too much to fix it. My dad just stared at the wall, his face a gray mask of anxiety. We were a portrait of suspended fear, waiting for the call that would tell us the transplant had begun. The double doors swung open, but it wasn't a smiling nurse. It was Dr. Evans, the head of the transplant team, and his face was anything but happy. It was tight, grim, and etched with a kind of professional pity that made my stomach turn to ice. "Chloe," he said, his voice low and heavy. My mom's knitting fell to the floor. "What is it?" my dad asked, surging to his feet. "Is something wrong with Maya?" "Maya is stable," Dr. Evans said, but it was no comfort. He was looking directly at me. "There's been a complication with the donor." A complication. The word was sterile, clinical. It didn't begin to capture the sheer terror that flooded my veins. "Liam, was it a reaction to the anesthesia? Is he okay?" Dr. Evans took a deep breath. "He's not here. Mr. Henderson never checked in for his pre-op this morning." The room tilted. The air grew thick and heavy, impossible to breathe. "What?" "No, that's not possible. I dropped him off at the front entrance myself at 5. He kissed me goodbye right there by the sliding doors. He said, "See you on the other side." "We've tried his cell," the doctor continued, his voice gentle but firm, like he was delivering a death sentence. "It's switched off. We've paged him overhead. We've had security check the parking garage. He's gone." "Gone?" My voice was a squeak. It didn't make sense. The words were just sounds. They didn't connect to reality. "Gone where?" "This is the most important day of his life, of our lives. He wouldn't just leave." "I am so sorry," Dr. Evans said, and the finality in his tone was like a physical blow. "We can't proceed. We're going to bring Maya back down from surgical prep." The sound my mother made was a strangled sob that tore through the quiet room. My dad wrapped his arms around her, but his eyes were on me, wide with confusion and horror. I couldn't process it. My brain was short-circuiting, trying to find a logical explanation where there was none. An accident? Did he get into a car wreck on the way home last night? No, I was with him. Did he have a panic attack? Did he get lost in the hospital? My fingers fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so violently I could barely unlock it. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I sent a text. "Liam, where are you?" "The hospital says you never checked in. Call me now." No reply. "I have to find him," I said, my voice shaking. "Something is wrong. Something terrible must have happened." I sprinted out of the waiting room, ignoring my parents' calls. The hospital corridors were a blur of white walls and pale green scrubs. I ran out into the crisp morning air, my lungs burning. I got in my car and drove, my mind racing. His apartment. He must have gone back to his apartment. Maybe he forgot something. Maybe he was sick. I used my key to let myself in, screaming his name. The apartment was silent, empty. It was exactly as we'd left it yesterday evening. A coffee mug was in the sink. His overnight bag for the hospital stay was gone. But he wasn't here. My panic was escalating into a full-blown, world-ending terror. Where else could he be? His parents. Of course. They were probably worried sick too. They would know something. They lived 20 minutes away, and I broke every speed limit to get there. I slammed the car into park and ran to their front door, not even bothering to ring the bell, just pounding on it with both fists. "Carol! John! It's Chloe! Open the door!" It took a moment, and then the door opened. John, Liam's father, stood there. He wasn't wearing his usual friendly golfing dad smile. He just looked tired. Behind him, in their immaculate living room, Carol was sitting on the sofa, staring into a cold fireplace. Neither of them looked surprised to see me. Neither of them looked frantic. "Where is he?" I gasped, stumbling into the foyer. "We have to find him. He missed the surgery. Maya—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Carol looked up at me. Her face was like stone. "He's not here, Chloe." "Then where is he?" I shrieked, the last thread of my composure snapping. "Why aren't you helping me look? Don't you understand what's happening?" "We understand perfectly," John said, closing the door behind me with a soft, final click. The sound echoed in the silent house. "Perhaps you should sit down." "I don't want to sit down. I want to know where my fiancé is." My eyes darted around the room, searching for clues, for anything that made sense. And then I saw it. On the polished mahogany coffee table, next to Carol's teacup, was a piece of paper, a bank receipt. My eyes, trained by years of managing Maya's medical bills, instantly snagged on the number. It was a wire transfer confirmation from their joint investment account to Liam's personal savings account. The amount made my breath catch in my throat. $500,000. My legs felt weak. I stumbled forward and snatched the paper from the table. Carol didn't even flinch. I stared at the numbers and then at the memo line, printed in neat, corporate font. It contained 3 words: our son's future. I looked up from the paper, my heart hammering against my ribs. I looked at Carol's cold, impassive face, at John's weary, resolute expression. And in that sickening, heart-stopping moment, I understood. They didn't look worried because they knew exactly where he was. Nothing terrible had happened to him. He hadn't had an accident. He hadn't had a panic attack. He'd been bought. And these 2 people, the people who had called me their future daughter, the people who had hugged me and promised me everything would be okay, were the ones who had signed the check. They hadn't just let it happen. They had orchestrated the whole thing. They had paid their son to let my sister die. My sister was dying, my world was ending, and the monsters responsible were staring at me from across a coffee table, their faces betraying not a single flicker of remorse. But how did we get here? How did I miss the signs? How could I have been so blind? It started, as most tragedies do, not with hate, but with what I thought was love. It began 5 years ago at a crowded, noisy fundraiser for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. I wasn't there to meet anyone. I was there for my sister, Maya. She was the reason I did everything. My entire life was built around her disease. Cystic fibrosis is a cruel, relentless thief. It steals your breath, your energy, your future. From the time we were little girls, I was her protector, her cheerleader, her second set of lungs when she was too tired to fight. Maya was beautiful, fierce, and funny, a vibrant soul trapped in a body that was constantly failing her. She painted, she wrote poetry, she could make anyone laugh, even on her worst days, when the coughing fits left her exhausted and gasping. Loving her was the easiest thing in the world. Watching her suffer was the hardest. That night, I was manning a booth, trying to explain the importance of organ donation to strangers, when he walked up. Liam. He was tall, with kind eyes and a smile that seemed to light up the whole room. He didn't just grab a pamphlet and walk away. He stayed. He asked questions, not just about the science, but about Maya. He listened, really listened, as I talked about her, about our lives. For the first time, in a long time, I felt like someone saw me, not just as Maya's caregiver, but as Chloe. He asked me out for coffee. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a whirlwind romance that felt like something out of a movie. He was everything I never knew I needed. He was patient, understanding, and strong. He wasn't scared off by the reality of my life, the hospital visits, the late-night emergencies, the constant shadow of sickness. He stepped into it, willingly and wholeheartedly. He adored Maya, and she adored him right back. He would come over and they'd have movie marathons. him making sure her nebulizer was running, her laughing at his terrible jokes. He learned the names of all her medications. He could tell the difference between a regular cough and a "we need to go to the ER" cough. He became part of our tiny, fragile ecosystem. He was my rock, the steady hand I could hold on to when the ground was shaking beneath my feet. A year into our relationship, I met his parents, John and Carol Henderson. They were the picture of suburban success, a beautiful home, a thriving business, a lifetime of comfort and security. And they were, I thought, wonderful. They welcomed me with open arms. Carol hugged me and told me, "We always wanted a daughter." John would clap Liam on the back and say, "This one's a keeper." They embraced Maya too, or so it seemed. They sent her flowers when she was in the hospital. They wrote generous checks to the CF Foundation. They always asked about her, their faces etched with what I mistook for genuine concern. "How is that sweet girl doing?" Carol would ask, her voice dripping with sympathy. We had Sunday dinners at their house, holidays. We were a family. They were the in-laws every girl dreamed of, kind, supportive, and loving. They made me feel safe. They made me believe in a future where everything might actually be okay. I was so blissfully, stupidly naive. The beginning of the end came last fall. Maya caught a lung infection that she just couldn't shake. Antibiotics weren't working anymore. She was hospitalized for weeks, her lung function plummeting to a terrifying new low. The doctor sat us down in one of those sterile, soulless family rooms and gave us the news we'd been dreading our whole lives. Her lungs were failing. The scar tissue was too extensive. A double lung transplant was no longer an option. The only thing that could save her now was a living donor liver transplant. The liver's regenerative properties meant a healthy person could donate a portion, and both the donors' and recipients' livers would grow back to full size. It was her last and only hope. A frantic search began. My parents and I were tested immediately. The agony of waiting for those results was unbearable, only to be crushed by the news that none of us were a match. We were the wrong blood type. It felt like a cruel joke. The people who loved her most were powerless to save her. We put her on the national registry, but the wait list was years long, and Maya only had months. Despair settled over our house like a thick fog. Hope was a flickering candle, and the wind was howling. It was during one of our darkest moments that Liam stepped forward. We were sitting in Maya's hospital room. She was asleep, an oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath. I was crying silently, holding her hand, when Liam knelt beside me. "I'm going to get tested," he said, his voice firm. I looked at him, my vision blurred with tears. "Liam, you don't have to do that." "Yes, I do," he said, wiping a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "Chloe, I love you, and I love her. She's my family, there's no question. I'm doing it." The relief that washed over me was so profound, it almost brought me to my knees. It was the first ray of sunshine I had seen in months. He was my hero, our hero. He told his parents that night. I was there. We were on speakerphone. "Wow, son," John said, his voice sounding a little strained. That's a big decision." "It's the right decision, Dad," Liam said confidently. "Of course it is, dear," Carol chimed in, her voice a little too bright. "We're just worried about you, that's all. It's major surgery." The doctors explained the risks. "They're minimal," Liam reassured them. "And it's for Maya. We have to try." "Of course we do," Carol said. "We love Maya. You let us know what you need, sweetheart. We'll support you 100%. They offered to cover his lost wages, to help with his recovery, to do anything and everything they could. They seemed like the perfect supportive parents. I loved them for it. I was so grateful. A week later, the miracle happened. Liam called me from his car. I could hear the smile in his voice. "Are you sitting down?" "Just tell me," I begged. "I'm a match, Chloe. I'm a perfect match." I screamed. I burst into tears. but this time they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. I ran into the living room and told my parents, and we all held each other, sobbing with relief. We had a donor. We had a chance. Maya was going to live. The surgery was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Those 6 weeks were supposed to be a time of hope and preparation. Instead, they became a slow, creeping nightmare that I was too blind to recognize. The first crack appeared about a week after we got the news. We were at the Hendersons for dinner. John was grilling steaks, and Carol had made her famous 7-layer salad. It was all supposed to be a celebration. "You know," Carol said, placing a hand on Liam's arm as he sat down. "I was reading online about this surgery. The recovery can be quite brutal. Weeks of pain, months before you're back to normal." "I know, Mom," Liam said patiently. "The doctors walked me through all of it. It's worth it." "It's just, you're at such a crucial point in your career," John added, flipping a steak. "That big project you're leading, can they really manage without you for that long?" "They'll be fine, Dad. I'll delegate." "It's a lot to ask of a young man," Carol sighed, looking at me with those sympathetic eyes. "To put your whole life on hold, to risk your own health, it's just so much." I felt a prickle of annoyance. "He's not just a young man, Carol. He's the man who loves my sister. He's saving her life." "Of course, dear, of course," she said, patting my hand. "We know that. We're just being parents. We worry." It seemed reasonable at the time, overprotective parents. But it continued. Every conversation was peppered with little comments, little seeds of doubt. "Did you get a second opinion on the risks, son? Have you thought about how this might affect your ability to get life insurance down the road? Is there no one else on that transplant list? Surely someone will come up." Liam grew more and more withdrawn. He was quiet, moody. When I asked him what was wrong, he'd just shake his head and say, "Just stressed." It's a lot to think about. I assumed he meant the surgery. I now know he meant the war being waged for his conscience. The pressure from his parents was relentless, insidious. It wasn't one big dramatic confrontation. It was 1,000 tiny cuts. They were chipping away at his resolve, framing his heroism as a foolish, unnecessary risk. They were reframing Maya not as a beloved sister-in-law to be, but as a burden, a liability, a threat to their son's perfect, pristine future. One night, about 2 weeks before the surgery, I overheard him on the phone with his mother. His back was to me, and his voice was low and tight with anger. "Mom, I've told you my decision is final. Please, stop. No, it's not fair to ask me that. This is not about money. I don't want to talk about this anymore." He hung up and saw me standing in the doorway. He looked pale and shaken. "What was that about?" I asked, my heart starting to pound. "Nothing," he said, running a hand through his hair. "It's just my mom. She's freaking out, thinking I'm going to die on the operating table. She's being ridiculous. Don't worry about it, I handled it." He kissed me, and I let myself believe him. I wanted to believe him so badly. He was my rock. He wouldn't let them get to him. He loved Maya. He loved me. That was stronger than their fear, right? The night before the surgery was the Last Supper. We all went to the Hendersons for dinner, a final gathering before the big day. The tension in their house was so thick you could taste it. Carol barely looked at me. John was unnaturally quiet. Liam looked like he was going to be sick. He just pushed food around his plate, his knuckles white where he gripped his fork. John stood up to give a toast. He raised his glass of expensive wine. "To family," he said, his eyes scanning the table before landing on me. They were as cold and dead as a shark's. "And to the incredible sacrifices we are sometimes called upon to make to protect the ones we love." It felt less like a toast and more like a threat. Later, as we were leaving, Carol pulled me into a hug. It was stiff and cold. "You be sure to take good care of my son," she whispered in my ear, her voice like ice. "He's a very special boy. He deserves the best in life." I drove Liam back to his apartment. He was silent the whole way. I thought it was nerves. I held his hand. It was cold and clammy. At his door, I hugged him tight. I love you more than words can say, I told him. You're giving my sister her life back. You're giving me my world back. He didn't answer. He just held me, his face buried in my hair. He was trembling. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were full of a kind of anguish I had never seen before. I thought it was fear for the surgery. I was so wrong. It was guilt. I love you, Chloe, he whispered. It sounded like a confession. The next morning, at 5 a.m., I picked him up. He was pale, but dressed and ready, his small hospital bag by the door. I drove him to the hospital entrance. I put the car in park. I'll see you on the other side, he said, leaning over to kiss me. It was a desperate, fleeting kiss. Then he got out of the car, gave me one last haunted look, and walked through the sliding glass doors. I watched him go, my heart filled with a mixture of terror and overwhelming love. I went and parked the car, then went to meet my parents in the waiting room, never for a single second suspecting that as soon as he was out of my sight, he had walked straight through the hospital lobby and out a different exit, where a taxi was waiting to take him to the airport. A taxi his father had called for him. And now, here I was, standing in their living room, holding the proof of their betrayal in my shaking hand. The wire transfer confirmation. $500,000. Our son's future. The blood was roaring in my ears. I looked from the paper to their faces. The mask of civility had dropped completely. There was no more pretense of concern, no more fake sympathy. There was only cold, hard calculation. You paid him, I whispered, the words tasting like poison. You paid your own son to run away. Carol finally spoke, her voice devoid of all emotion. We did what was necessary to protect our family. Liam was being emotional. He wasn't thinking clearly. Not thinking clearly? I screamed, my voice cracking. He was saving a life. He was being a hero. And you turned him into a coward. He was sacrificing his future for a sick girl, John said, his voice level and chillingly reasonable. A girl who, let's be honest, has been a drain on you, on your family, for her entire life. We couldn't let him tie himself to that. To a lifetime of sickness and hospitals and God knows what else. He deserves more. He deserves a clean start. The sheer cruelty of his words stole my breath. A drain? My sister, my beautiful, brilliant Maya, was a drain. Where is he? I demanded, my voice a low growl. I want to talk to him. I want him to look me in the eye and tell me he's okay with this. Carol almost smiled. It was the most terrifying expression I had ever seen. That's not possible. His flight left an hour ago. He's on his way to Singapore. John pulled some strings, got him a transfer to head up the new international branch of his company. It's a wonderful opportunity for him. A promotion. He'll be gone for at least 2 years. They hadn't just paid him to back out of the surgery. They had paid him to disappear from my life completely. They had surgically excised me and my dying sister from their perfect family narrative. They had bought him a new life in a new country, leaving us behind to deal with the wreckage. He agreed to this? I asked, my heart shattering into a million pieces. He took your money and ran? We helped him see the logic of the situation, John said calmly. Love is an emotion. A house, a career, financial security. Those are tangible assets. We gave him $500,000, Chloe. A fresh start, far away from all this unpleasantness. He made a business decision. A business decision. Letting my sister die was a business decision. Something inside me snapped. I don't remember everything that happened next. I remember screaming. Words I didn't know I was capable of saying. I called them monsters, ghouls, murderers. I threw the wire transfer confirmation at Carol's face. It fluttered to the carpet at her feet. She didn't even look down. She just watched me, her eyes filled with a cold, detached pity, as if I were a wild animal having a fit. John stepped forward. I think it's time for you to leave, he said, his voice still unnervingly calm. He took my arm. His grip was like steel. "Don't touch me!" I shrieked, ripping my arm away from him. "Don't you ever touch me again!" I backed away from them, out of that sterile, heartless room, out of their perfect, monstrous house. I stumbled to my car, my body shaking with sobs. The drive back to the hospital was a blur of tears and rage. How was I going to tell them? How was I going to walk into that waiting room and tell my parents that our last hope was gone? Not because of fate or bad luck, but because of greed. How was I going to look my sister in the eye and tell her that the man she called her brother, the man I was supposed to marry, had sold her life for a promotion and a fat bank account? I walked back into the waiting room like a ghost. My parents looked up, their faces desperate for news. One look at my face, and they knew. I collapsed into my father's arms and told them everything. The wire transfer, the promotion, Singapore, the things John and Carol had said. My mother's wails filled the sterile silence of the hallway, a sound of pure animal grief that I will never forget as long as I live. The worst part was yet to come. I had to go see Maya. She was back in her room, the oxygen mask on her face again. She looked so small, so fragile. She managed a weak smile when I walked in. "Hey," she rasped. "What happened? Did Chicken Liver change his mind?" It was her silly nickname for him. I sat on her bed and took her hand. The tears I thought I'd run out of started flowing again. And I told her. I told her everything, my voice breaking with every word. I told her about the money, about his parents, about how he was gone. She listened, her big, beautiful eyes never leaving my face. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. When I was finished, she just squeezed my hand. "It's not your fault, Chloe," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I should have seen it," I sobbed. "I should have known." "You saw the good in him," she said, a single tear rolling down her temple, "because you have so much good in you." We just sat there for a long time, holding hands, the hum of the oxygen machine filling the silence. The hope that had carried us for weeks was gone, extinguished as quickly and cruelly as a candle flame in a hurricane. We were back in the dark, and this time it felt like there was no way out. In the days that followed, a strange thing happened. Our story, the story of the donor who vanished, got out. A family friend, furious and heartbroken, wrote a long, angry post on Facebook. It was shared, and shared again. A local news station picked it up. Suddenly, Maya's story was everywhere. It was a human interest story with a villain. It was the ultimate tale of betrayal. People were horrified. They were outraged on our behalf. And then, they started to act. The story sparked a conversation, and that conversation sparked a movement. People were so moved by the injustice of what happened to Maya that they started signing up to be organ donors in droves. The Regional Donation Center said they had never seen a surge like it. People were sending messages of support, starting prayer chains, donating to a new GoFundMe page for Maya's care. It was a strange, bittersweet feeling. The world was showing us so much love, all because we had been shown so much hate. We were grateful, but it didn't change the fact that Maya was still dying. And then, 10 days after Liam disappeared, we got another call from Dr. Evans. "I don't know how to explain this," he said, and for the first time I heard a tremor of excitement in his professional voice. "It's a 1 in a million shot, a true altruistic donor. A young woman who saw the story on the news signed up last week. She just got her test results back. Chloe, she's a perfect match." The world stopped and then started again, this time in brilliant color. Hope, real and true and powerful, flooded back in. Not the fragile hope we had pinned on one person, but a hope born from the kindness of a complete stranger. The second time we sat in that surgical waiting room, there was no anxiety, just a profound sense of peace. Maya got her new liver. The surgery was a success. Her recovery was long and brutal, a painful uphill battle every single day. But she was a fighter. She fought for every breath, for every step, for every bit of her new life. And I was there with her, for all of it. I scrubbed Liam and his family from my life. I deleted his number, blocked him on every social media platform, threw out every picture, every gift, every memory. They were poison, and I needed the antidote. My life became about Maya's recovery, about my own healing, about rediscovering who I was without him. It turned out I was stronger than I ever thought. It's been a year now. Maya is thriving. Her laughter, a sound I thought I might never hear again, now fills our home. She's painting again, her canvases exploding with color and life. She has a future. We have a future. A few nights ago, I was sitting on the back porch, watching her chase a firefly in the twilight, her movements still a little slow, but full of grace. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from an unknown number. I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I need you to know I am so sorry. I think about what I did every single second of every day. It was a mistake, a terrible, unforgivable mistake. I was a coward. I know I can't fix it. I just needed to say it. L. I stared at the message for a long moment. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no spark of the love I once felt. It was just empty. A ghost from a life that wasn't mine anymore. The betrayal had been a monstrous, gaping wound, but it had been cauterized by the love of my family and the kindness of a stranger. It had scarred over, and the person I was now was tougher, wiser, and more grateful for what was real. I looked up at my sister, her face illuminated by the jar of fireflies she held in her hands, her smile bright enough to outshine the stars. I deleted the message, I blocked the number, and I went to join her in the beautiful, precious, vibrant dark.